Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Wanda Gray, and I am your host for today's session. I'm also the education manager for Crayola, and so happy that you are joining. Today's topic is Draw Families into School, Creativity Conversations with Parents. We have three wonderful presenters today. You probably know Sherry by now, but our Director of Education, Sherry Sturman. Tanya Kelly is with us today, the local program director with the National Turnaround Arts Program based in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and then also Emily Patel, implementation and early childhood education manager, also with Turnaround Arts. As you can see, we always like to jumpstart our presentations with student artwork, and so we have our three presenters in this lively and colorful illustration collaborating on how to engage families and students in schools. So always like to start off in that colorful way. If you have not currently joined our community, please do. We encourage you to join this free community, Champion Creativity, the Power of Arts-Infused Education, to partake in ideas around arts-infused education topics. As a member, you will receive invitations to upcoming webinars. You will be able to view webinar recordings that you miss and access resources within our archives, our library. If you are not on our webinars live, you will have the ability to take CE quizzes only if you are not on live. And then also to participate in online discussions. So we really like to encourage you to make sure that you join the community by using the URL at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, or forward this link to friends and colleagues and ask them to join as well. As part of joining and participating in our webinars, you will receive a certificate of completion. And if you've logged in live with your email with us today, your certificate will be emailed to you the next business day. If you join by phone, however, you will have to take a brief 4-question CE quiz, simple. And if you're also watching a recording, you would have to do the same. So to access the quiz, once again, you would have to join the community at edweb.net/creativity, and you would be able to access it there within the webinar archives. So at this time, we're going to get started. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Sherry Sturman to begin the presentation. Sherry?
Great, thank you so much. So we're really excited to share with you some ideas how you can draw families into your school by focusing on creativity. And you'll receive a lot of resources in our library that can spark these family conversations in your school. So Wanda did a beautiful job of introducing our panelists. And actually, Wanda is not only serving as our community host today, but she's also going to jump in for a couple of the slides and be sharing some of her experiences. Because Wanda and I have had the pleasure of working with our Turnaround Arts colleagues for a number of years now. And so you can see from the photos and the slides, Wanda has been in the schools and using these resources, and so she will share her personal experience with this too. And it's just such a pleasure to invite Tanya and Emily to share the stories of how these conversations have come alive in their schools. So before we get started, we'd like to just begin by letting you know what's coming up at the end, that at the close of the webinar, we let you know how you can win free Crayola product. But it might help you to think about that all the way along, so you could be planning how you're going to implement these ideas and how you can qualify to win the Crayola webinar giveaway. So for those of you who've been on our webinars before, you know how this works, but we have a lot of new people registered today, so I'm excited to share with you the process. To thank you for participating and creating artwork and posting that artwork to share for others in the community to learn from, we send you an appreciation gift. So the way it works is first make sure you're a member of the Champion Creativity community. You'll get the link and the information about how to post the artwork. We always focus the art around the topic. So today, what we're asking is you would post a piece of artwork that would be created at a parent meeting, at a parent conversation, building off the ideas that we shared today. And for the first 50 educators who do post that artwork in this community, they'll receive a free class pack of Crayola Model Magic. And then you do see the note at the bottom that we explain every webinar. Well, we'd love to see the art that's made from all over the world, regardless of where you live. Due to shipping requirements, this gift is only available for participants from the U.S. and Canada. So you can see the picture there of the box of Model Magic that can be yours if you're one of the first 50 to post your artwork. So really excited about that, and good for you to be thinking about it as we go through the ideas. So let's start by outlining the 4 objectives that we have today. We are going to address why building strong partnerships with parents and families is so important. We're very fortunate that our Turnaround Arts Program colleagues are here to share insights about why family engagement is such a key pillar to the success of that program and how they do it so beautifully. We're going to share with you resources. In fact, it's a series of 8 family conversations around creativity, and you can access that series from the library. So these are ideas of how to bring families into your school focused on creative expression. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into 2 of those exercises. Wanda's going to share with us her experience with the crystal ball, preparing children for the future. And then Wanda and Emily are going to share how they used the outside the box exercise to expand thinking about what new and different ways to engage families in your school. So as long as we're agreed on our objectives, let's just dive right in. I always like to start with this grounding of a quote from one of my favorite authors, Joyce Epstein. And she really points to that the way schools care about children is reflected in the way schools care about those children's families. And what I really love about this insight is that family engagement is not something we do after the fact, right, as an afterthought, after we've done everything else we need to do for children. No, instead, Joyce reminds us that family engagement is integral, just a key integral part woven into everything we do for the children who attend our programs. And I think, you know, what I love is as people were signing in today, they were saying where they were from. And we saw a range from infant and toddler programs all the way through high school and college. And so it's just key for us to think about this as a full life cycle. Engaging families, regardless of the age of the student, is a key way for our programs to be successful. So I'm going to now turn this over to Emily, who's going to share why this matters to Turnaround Arts.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I'll share a little bit about Turnaround Arts and about how we think about engaging families through the arts. So at Turnaround Arts, we know that leveraging the arts to bring families into schools is a great way to do that in an increasingly meaningful way, and that had to be a pillar, a cornerstone of our program. We've seen, and our schools have seen over the past few years, that using the arts to engage families helps invest them in creativity early on and can lay the foundation for schools and families to work as partners throughout a student school career. I want to share a little bit about Turnaround Arts with you to give you some context about our organization and our work with families. So Turnaround Arts, at Turnaround Arts, we turn around priority schools and spark whole school change through strategic use of the arts. We were born out of the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities as part of the Obama administration's advisory council to the president, with Michelle Obama serving as our honorary chair. In 2011, many of you may have seen this report. They released this Reinvesting in Arts Education report that found what many of us knew to be true about the arts, which is that students with high involvement in the arts perform better in school and stay in school longer, that arts integrated approaches result in better attendance, fewer discipline problems, increased test scores, and ultimately that students engaged in the arts are more likely to attend and do well in college, obtain employment, volunteer, and even vote. But the study also found that the students who benefited the most from the arts were getting them the least, and that there was 6 million kids in this country, mostly living in poverty, who had no access to arts education. So it led them to ask some really important questions. What if high-needs students got as much opportunities in the arts as students in more affluent areas? Would that help close the achievement gap? And could the arts serve as a way to not only bring joy into schools, but also as a way to develop higher order and critical thinking skills that would be crucial to their success? So with those questions in mind, the committee founded Turnaround Arts in 2011. They went into 8 schools and in, as you can see, communities across the country to test this hypothesis that we could empower principals and teachers and the community to improve schools with the arts as a key tool in school turnaround and not something nice that you can add once schools are turned around or once test scores were brought up. We worked with arts teachers and classroom teachers in these communities and in these schools, brought in murals and community art projects and teaching artists, included families, facilitated some high quality professional development and teacher collaboration, and really focused on building the capacities of schools and of teachers. And Turnaround Arts at the end of our pilot phase released an evaluation report that showed that the arts had helped turn around these schools. So discipline improved, and so in many of our schools, in fact, in all the schools where it was a significant problem, suspensions went down, expulsions went down, attendance went up. We also saw math and reading test scores improve across our pilot schools, but perhaps most significantly, when compared with similar schools in their districts who were not using the arts as part of school reform strategy, scores at Turnaround Arts schools grew 6% more in math and 7% more in reading, disproving the idea that taking time away from math and reading to focus on the arts would decrease scores. And in fact, the arts were helping students to engage and learn more successfully. So after this initial phase, we began expanding into communities. We now work in nearly 70 schools in 12 regions across the country. We've also joined the Kennedy Center and their excellent roster of education programs. So as we look to expand into communities, we took this really key question to guide our thinking, and it's something that may help guide your thinking at schools as well, which is, how can we use the arts to solve our existing school challenges? How can we see the arts as not just another thing that has to be done, but a key tool for helping us meet the needs of our students and of our school community? So that question, how can we solve challenges using the arts, led us to identify these 8 pillars. And I know they're a little hard to see, so I'll share them with you. But how can we use these 8 pillars, strategically integrate the arts in each of these 8 pillars to help schools meet their goals? So the pillars are principal, arts specialist, non-arts classroom teachers, teaching artists, parents, communities in the district, comprehensive strategic approach, professional development, and school environment. So the thinking was that if we could figure out how and support schools to integrate the arts to help solve challenges throughout the school and use the arts in each of these areas, then schools would be more successful. We know that schools, so often the challenges are so in the forefront, and what we found is using the arts across these pillars helps schools think of creative solutions to some of their challenges. For example, we have schools who say, our students are struggling with math story problems. They get the conceptual understanding of math, but cannot apply it to word problems. Well, why not act it out or visualize it? Well, that helps students hit that deeper level of understanding. We have a lot of schools who say our attendance is really struggles first thing in the morning. So can you put the arts classes at the beginning of the day and really attract the grade level who has the toughest problem with attendance and get those students to school first thing and get them excited to be there? So this maximizing mindset and this creative thinking is, our schools are really applying this specifically and really successfully in the area of family engagement. It's a common challenge at so many of our sites. In fact, nearly all of our schools have identified that family engagement is a key challenge and one that they're really excited and interested in applying new and creative thinking to solve and to bring families into school. To support our schools in those efforts, we created this framework for inclusive family engagement, and I know you can find that in the library as well, and I encourage you to check it out. So we found that this question, how can we use the arts to address a challenge, is particularly powerful when applied to family engagement. So our schools started thinking about how they could strategically use the arts to make parents feel welcome, how they could use the arts to keep parents coming back to school, and how we could offer families more meaningful and sustained ways to contribute to the school community. So in that vein, we share this framework with our schools, and we think it has some really straightforward questions to reflect on and tips for schools to be thinking about as you're considering really deepening your engagement with families. We know that often families come to schools for negative reasons, whether it's challenging behavior or poor test scores, or report card grades. And so these questions really think about how to reframe your interactions with families in a positive light. Questions like, how can we seek to understand what parents are looking for in family engagement? How can we be responsive to what they're interested in? And how can we communicate partnership and respect with families? And also some really simple tips, like make sure it's a conversation, not a lecture. Ask for family feedback and then act on it so that they know you're genuine, and have a little fun. Ultimately, if you're putting yourself in parents' shoes and trying to understand what you might be looking for if you were a parent coming to the school, then we find that that's a really helpful guiding framework. So some of the successes our schools have seen when applying this framework and this thinking are really exciting and adorable. We have a lot of our schools who see that when they're using the arts, say, for example, to put on a school musical, that families get really engaged and excited, not in just coming to the musical, but in helping build sets and create costumes or put on makeup for the performance of The Lion King. Student art shows, like the picture you can see on the right, also bring in more and more families because it gives an opportunity to highlight every student in the school, not just the few who are in the choir or in the musical performance. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a picture of our Mardi Gras parade at one of our schools in New Orleans. The arts are also great for highlighting community events that are really special or unique to that community, and is often an opportunity where parents will jump at the chance to be involved. Opportunities like this then give families a chance to share their own expertise. Maybe they have a singer or an artist in the family. Our schools have also seen that as these arts experiences happen over time, they become traditions, and all of a sudden you can't imagine a year where there isn't a musical or a student art show. One of the resources that we developed in conjunction with Crayola was the Family Conversation series that Sherry mentioned. And this has really helped our schools think about how to really deepen family engagement and really engage families in a conversation. This conversation series offers a structure for family engagement that we think is really pretty simple and straightforward, but also really supportive for teachers and facilitators. And we think it's really inviting and fun for families. So each session opens with a discussion, which we think really sets the tone off right for this being a conversation and a partnership between families and schools. There's a video and a reflection, and then a creative opportunity for families that is always the highlight. Families get to share with each other and laugh alongside each other, and also think about how they can apply this creative experience at home with their families or their other children. And they also can make connections for how teachers may be using some of these similar skills in the classroom. Each session also has an opportunity for family feedback, which we know is so important. And once their creative juices are flowing, families are often really inclined to share feedback and the things that would keep them coming back to school. So I'll give you a quick overview of each of these conversations, and they're called conversations for a reason. They really can spark great conversation between families and parents on matters that are, between families and schools that are really important and at the top of mind these days. So these first two sessions, when something is created, something bigger happens, and creativity matters, really helps families identify their own experiences with creativity. They often have beliefs about creativity to unpack, or even, unfortunately, some misconceptions or bad experiences with creativity. If someone told them that they weren't a good artist or they weren't very creative in the past, we find that folks really tend to internalize that. So just unpacking their experiences with and the value of creativity are covered in these first two sessions. These sessions also can happen in order, or can happen in any order that you find is helpful or meets a need of your school community. So the second two sessions here, Thinking About Thinking and Imagine What If, really address 21st century skills of start the conversation with families about critical thinking and about all these skills that we know are so important for students to have as they move through school and into adulthood. Art draws family together, and stories and pictures helps families make connections. So thinking about how they can use the arts in their own home and in their families, and also the ways that teachers may be using the arts in their classrooms to cover academic content as well. And then finally, what Wanda will share more about, and the one that often inspires lots of smiles and maybe even a few tears is the Preparing Children for the Future and Communicating Through the Arts sessions. Those really offer families a chance to talk about their dreams for themselves and their children and think about how the arts can be a vehicle for expressing yourself. So these conversations at our schools, we've seen them really help increase understanding and communication between schools and families and really move past those sort of initial transactional relationships that families often have with schools, and really move into a place of real conversation and understanding. So Wanda, I know, is going to tell you a little bit more about these conversations.
Thank you, Emily. You know, it's wonderful to be able to say that I've had the privilege of being involved with these conversations at the Turnaround Arts Schools. And so I'm so happy to be able to share this with you as you can consider how you might structure these within your school communities as well. But as Emily alluded to a little while ago, the one that we're going to showcase today is Preparing Children for the Future. And as Emily mentioned, you know, we really wanted these to be adaptable and flexible and relevant, but absolutely positively fun. So these have all been structured in a way that, you know, is really relevant and meaningful to families. This one, I think, is probably nearest and dearest to families' heart because it really is about, you know, preparing children for the future and thinking about how can families and teachers work together to co-educate for children's immediate and long-term success. So really thinking about what can families and educators do together? How can they co-educate on behalf of the betterment of student success? How can they work together to prepare students for college and careers, for work, for life? So it really is the one that does tug on the heartstrings because it really talks about, you know, each of the parents, the families, and the educators, you know, coming on into a place of common ground and common understanding about, you know, what's best for kids, and as well as, you know, the dreams and aspirations of students. Secondly, you know, we then can show a video. So it's always nice to be able to make these ideas concrete. So we recommend showing the video for family engagement, and it coincidentally features one of the Turnaround Arts Schools based in Washington, D.C., which is Savoy. But showing the video is a great way to reinforce these concepts. And then we structure it finally with that culminating hands-on activity to really kind of epiphanies and create those shared bonds and shared understandings with parents and educators. And so we call this one Visualizing a Child's Future and If I Had a Crystal Ball. And there's just something very special about thinking about looking into a crystal ball and seeing dreams and aspirations and visions for students. And so you see some of the examples at the bottom of the screen that were created in these sessions. And it's very simple to do, and we'll walk through that in a second. But just wanted to let you know, in terms of the video, it's the Creativity Connects Schools with Families video. It's a quick 4-minute video, and it can be accessed at the URLs that are shown on the screen, you know, at Crayola.com educators, but also will be available in the library of the Champion Creativity community. So you may access it very easily there. But again, just a quick way to, you know, reinforce these concepts about how schools and families can work together. Also is a nice springboard to the conversation about, you know, kind of sparking ideas and thoughts, you know, asking families, you know, how can we help them, allowing them to help us in terms of understanding students, and just seeing some best practices in action from exemplary schools that are doing this. So just a nice way to further the discussion in your session. So really what we're asking is we're talking about having a discussion about visualizing a child's success, discussing what prepares children for the future, thinking about the role of creativity in education and how can, you know, we prepare children for tomorrow, not only today, but for tomorrow. And parents and educators, you know, how they have aligned goals. And so doing this exercise is so foundational and just it's so compelling when you think about, you know, how can we engage families to help them understand that partnership, and that as educators, we want to welcome them into the school environment, and we want to collaborate with them on students. So how we kind of structure the hands-on exercise is it begins with a discussion. It begins with probes and prompts around, envisioning a child. So if you're an educator or if you're a parent, how you can envision a particular child. What are your hopes and aspirations for this child? What would help this child achieve? Just brainstorming and having those conversations. Allowing families to share what they know, because of course we always say that the parent is the child's first teacher. So really gaining their ideas, and what would happiness and success look like? How would creativity help build this student's success or this child's success? And then we always throw prompts out there based on the skills and the talents and the interests of the students, and those visions within that those crystal balls. Is it a performer? Is it your child is a great problem solver and critical thinker and thinks out of the box? Is it that you see them being a scientist or an engineer? Are they just athletically inclined? Strong and disciplined and resilient? So it just really, these are just some prompts to kind of start the conversation and keep it going. Just in terms of asking those parents, what are your visions, and having teachers share theirs. So you can see there another example, and these are sessions from a family engagement session in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where we did this with Tanya's teacher. So yeah, we will talk a little bit more about that. So then we get to the creation stage. So what is the art? And so we always look at these 4 artistic processes of create, present, respond, and connect. So first, what I'm going to do is use colorful tactile art supplies to bring these ideas to life. And there's options in terms of how you could do this. We're showing you examples of doing this in a 3D piece of art, doing the crystal balls using, plastic cups and plates, and actually we sculpted Model Magic on the inside. And so the Model Magic kind of represented, those icons, those symbols, those images of what we would see in the crystal ball. And then on the outside, we used materials that would adhere to plastic, to just kind of use words and phrases just to kind of explain, those visual representations. So it's all hands-on, and we have found that this exercise is very engaging to families because it's not a drawing exercise per se. It's really they're able to be hands-on and tactile and demonstrate their thinking. However, we do always like to give options, and so we do have a option where these ideas could be illustrated in drawings and in sketches. So that's just another option. And then after, in these sessions, families and educators, whether it's a staff meeting or a parent engagement meeting, after they create the art, we always want them to share, what were your hopes and aspirations for this child? What bubbled up to the top? When we talk about responding to each other's ideas, what you find is there's patterns, there's common goals, there's alignment. And so when we've gone around the room and we've actually shared examples in these sessions, you really do find that the educators that share, their art, and then parents that share other art, so they're so often so similar because they really do manifest in terms of we do have these shared ideas. And so this is just an awesome activity, and I really encourage you all to really try this because it's a great bonding experience. It's a great creative hands-on experience, and it really helps connect with families. Also, you can do this we've also talked about students being in the room, because sometimes in these family engagement sessions, we have students with families, which is, the best. And so we've heard some interesting conversations about, family members saying, or mom saying, oh, I see you being a doctor. And this child saying, really? Because I thought I want to be a teacher, So it kind of sparks very interesting dialogues, even within the family. So just wanted to give you those examples. I think Tanya actually is going to take a few moments to expand her insights from when we have done this and how they have positioned these exercises, this one in particular with families at Bridgeport. Tanya?
Thank you, Wanda. My staff had an amazing time creating their sculptures and looking at not only their lives, but the lives of the children that they affect every day. They found that there were similarities between their hopes and their goals and their dreams for their students, as well as for themselves and for the families. They were all very similar, and they found out there was a common bond, a common language that permeated throughout the room and throughout when they began to talk about their own students and their own families in their own classrooms. We had an amazing exercise. We extended this exercise by helping the parents to see that they are partners with us in the teaching of their children. And we extended this particular exercise by taking it to the classroom. And we had the students to be we selected one student to be student of the day. And that student of the day was able to share their goals and their dreams with one another. And then that way, we extended it through a writing exercise. That exercise was used so that the other students could write positive notes to that child. They could also write something that was similar about their goals, and every child had the opportunity to be the shining example for that day. And it also helped them to engage in conversation about why they wanted to be whatever they wanted to be, or what they see themselves being in the future. Everyone has a future. We all want to be successful, and this exercise was a talking point, a starting point for the teachers, as well as the families, as well as the students. In our staff meeting, what we did was we wanted a vision for our schools. Across all of the Turnaround Arts schools, we wanted a vision. And sometimes you see a vision differently than I see a vision. And so when everyone was allowed to create their vision and we had an opportunity to discuss it as a team, it helped to inspire communication and bring our common goals in line with one another and to collaborate. So this, as Wanda said, was an amazing opportunity to begin conversations and to talk with families and staff. We cannot stress how important it is for us to meet parents at their entry point. And as we create together, it takes away the writing. It just begins a conversation about what our hopes and what our dreams are. And it helps to get parents into our buildings. If we can't get them into our buildings, then how do we build them as a partner along with us? And we use the arts as a way to engage families, such as what Emily said. We bring the parents in. They become a greater part of the school community. They become active partners, and they help to build better achievement outcomes. Just think of the time when you when you were in school and your parent joined you in your classroom. It brought so much joy to you, and to see them just participating and helping them to understand and teach you the importance of to be in school, not just for extracurricular activities, but academic achievement as well. And we used a particular, I'll be talking more about it, but a 52 weeks activity. We were able to get parents involved in our professional development sessions with the staff. We were able to learn more about our parents, and we were able to learn more about what they knew or didn't know about the education and what was going on in the classroom. So we found what worked best for us is to bring the parents in, have these discussions, and get them involved in different activities. And the 52 weeks activity, there's 52 activities. All you have to do is select an activity that aligns to the curriculum. It's what we did, and that's what our next steps were. 52-week activity. We were excited to have our parents join us, And in our activities and our students in our activities, we had one school who used activity number 40, If Pigs Could Fly. They aligned that to the curriculum, and they had parents to come in every first Thursday of the month. So parents were already aware that they're always welcome, but their voices are heard strongly. Every first Thursday of the month, they knew in advance what was going to happen. They would come in from 8 a.m. to 8:40 and work with their children, come into the schools with their kids to learn about how to align these opportunities to the curriculum and what was going on in class. They learned how to help their children to retell a story, sequencing a story, in using If Pigs Could Fly. They even created hand puppets retelling the story and talking about the sequence. Some did the beginning, some did the middle, some did the end, and when you put it together, you had happy children, happy families, and they were able to learn something in the process. And we deepened this family engagement because, as we often think that parents only come to our schools when there's something bad. So we built up a network, a strong database of families supporting one another because they felt welcome and they trusted the atmosphere. So they collaborate more together, and we built stronger classroom communities as a result. Our student attendance increased because our kids wanted to be in these schools that help them create, not only sit at desk, but help them to understand what they're learning through creativity. So the families came together and created lessons and homework and alphabet books and sound books by using the arts. Now we have parents that volunteer more because they feel like they are welcomed in our school. We have that curriculum alignment with arts integration. Now they're beginning to know what arts integration is, and we have a stronger culture with shared goals because now we know about one another and what's best. What we want is what's best for all of our kids, and that is for us to build a stronger connection between the teacher and the parents. So I'd like to turn this over to Sherry.
Great, thank you. I loved hearing your stories. So rich.
Thank you.
And so what we're going to do now is transition to sharing some of the ideas that we've heard from other schools that we've worked with. We've had the pleasure of working with the Turnaround Art Schools, and they have such a robust commitment to arts integration. But that's also something we hear from our grant-winning schools. So not sure if you guys are familiar, if the participants know about the Champion Creatively Alive Children grants, but I was thrilled to see when people signed in that Brandon from North Carolina introduced himself as having one of our Champion Creatively Alive Children grants. So shout out to Brandon. Thank you for mentioning that. And we're putting the grant application flyer in the library, so those of you who weren't familiar with it do get to see what is how you can apply for a Crayola Champion Creativity Grant. And one of the things we're looking for is innovative ways to build family engagement around creativity. So this all does tie together. So some of the key points that we see when educators make a strong commitment to arts integration is they're using it as this powerful strategy to draw families in and to have a more collaborative environment school-wide. So that impacts, one of those key points is making sure that that learning environment is really inspiring and inclusive for the entire community. And that impacts the culture. I loved your expression before, Tanya, about the atmosphere in the school. So whether we call it, the atmosphere or the climate that people feel when they come in, if it feels warm and welcoming, or something that's really pervasive and deep in describing the personality of the school, which is the school culture, we want to make sure it's very inclusive and very welcoming. And as the point here notes, particularly for families that come to our schools with diverse languages and cultures. And I like to make this sort of a personal reflection for those of you who are joining us in the webinar. Just imagine for a moment if you were new to this country and you hadn't yet felt like you'd mastered the dominant language that most of the people in the school were using. How can you feel welcome? How can you feel like your voice is heard? And what we're excited about is art is the universal language. So in a lot of our schools, there are 27 different languages being spoken under one roof. And so, well, we're fortunate to have some bilingual teachers or maybe some trilingual teachers. There isn't a teacher out there that speaks 27 languages. So what is the universal language that enables all of us to communicate on a level playing field and give parents that are new to your community a voice? And that's art. And so just think about how comforting that can be, that when you ask questions where people sketch their thought or draw a map of their thinking, right? How that makes them feel so welcome, because being that universal language, their thoughts, their feelings can be shared just along with every other person who's already mastered the English language. Very, very important for welcoming families. And think about how the cultures that families who are new to communities bring, whether that's the visual arts, or as Emily was talking about, drama and music. So that honors that family's culture and makes them feel so special in that community. So one of the key themes that we see, a common thread in all of the schools that are doing this exemplary job of engaging their families, is that we see a deep commitment to engaging families in new and different and diverse ways. We like to think of it as, sure, there's a lot of traditional ways of involving families. We think of that as sort of inside the box, traditional ideas. And then we say, stretch yourself, think out of the box. Think of really new and deep ways to engage families. And so, for example, one of the very traditional things that schools do, and they're colorful and they're fun, is they have family art nights. And yet we would urge you, in addition to your family art nights, what can you do that would deepen the conversation and deepen that commitment and deepen that understanding? We have a colleague who says, he loves those family art nights, but they are a bit of colorful chaos, right? So we want that joy and that excitement and that energy that comes from those nights where you're bursting the seams in your building and you've got families visiting and siblings running around and all the arts are showcased. But we also want those quieter settings where families can actually sit down and talk about creativity and the impact of art. And that's why those family conversations are those deeper immersions. So we urge you to think broadly about things that you've already been doing that are traditional and whole school and really exciting, and also some of these quieter, deeper partnerships, and stretch your thinking outside of the box. So we developed a little framework. It's a handout, actually, that's in the library. It's an exercise to help you think about stretching beyond the ordinary. And an expression we often use is make the ordinary extraordinary, and really push yourself to think of new and different ways to engage your families. So in this framework, we think about the 4 sort of classic ways of involving families. And if you can come up with more than 4, please let us know. Love to see some contributions to the text chat box over here, particularly for those of you who are family engagement specialists or doing some outside additional research and work on this. But when we think about the 4 main ways that families and schools interact, the first thing that comes to mind is communicating, right? It's got to be strong communication. So we're going to urge you to, jot down in this exercise, what are you doing currently? And then how could you stretch yourself in new and different ways? And then usually what comes up next when we ask people how they involve their families in their school, they say volunteering. We're always looking for volunteers, or we'll say, we've got a great group of families, parents who are volunteering. And we say, great, okay, put what you're doing inside the box, right? You're already doing it. Don't stop. Keep it going. But now stretch yourself. What else can you do? And then there's a lot of conversation about this third area, right? Having this shared look at parenting and learning at home, paralleling, aligning with the learning that goes on school, And what are you doing now? And so this is far more than homework helpers. This is really being true partners, the term that Wanda used before, co-educating, being shared stakeholders and making sure that every child meets their full potential. And then the fourth area, which is actually my favorite, is decision making. Really challenge yourself to think about how are parents involved in the decisions that run the school. And you might put a couple in the box. You might say, oh, we've got parents who are on our PTA or PTO, and we have parents who are, representative of the Parent Policy Council. Great. But now, stretch yourself further. How can you really leave some of the key decision-making about your school in the hands of parents and share that responsibility? And so stretch yourself in that way. So let's see how these four areas frame up. So when we think about communication, just want to emphasize that it's got to be a two-way street. It's not just what you send out from school to home. How do you also get some really strong insights from what's going on at home into the school? And so yes, there'll be about policies and programs and information about practice sessions and information about student progress, but stretch yourself to think about some of those special moments, right? Just some of those utter delights that you just happen to capture that you'd want parents to see and have a glimpse at, right? So think beyond the formal that you've always done and think of some of the joyous snippets that you could be sharing. Now, in terms of volunteering, we urge you, come up with many opportunities. Go beyond the traditional. And to do that, it's really important to respect diversity. Respect the diversity, like we said before, of language, of culture, but also of family schedules, some of the religious practices that might make certain days of the week less available to them than others. Respect their work schedules and, can't have everything starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or, can't have everything starting at 7 o'clock in the evening. Think about the diversity, the realities of your community. Make sure you really welcome parents to share. They're going to share their time and talents when they feel you value it and respect it. So what are the tangible ways that we show what we value and respect? I saw a question come in on the chat box about asking about how we honor the families who are homeless and don't have a consistent bedroom to sleep in and a consistent refrigerator to hang children's artwork on, and I just love that question. So again, be very respectful of the diversity in your community and welcome them. And I love that someone typed into the chat box that make a special place for displaying the artwork at school so those children don't feel singled out or don't feel like there isn't a place respected. And I just want to mention on this welcoming families that the walls talk. What we display in the room, on the walls of our schools, actually does talk about what we value and does show what's important to us. So make sure that your walls do talk. Let's see. I just lost the video connection on my computer, but I'm going to use Kristen so we can keep on going. So, yeah. Okay. So the next point. Whoops, I think we jumped ahead here. So here. Yes, I think we. Okay. Whoops. So the other thing on volunteering is to be sure that you have parents helping you as champions of that, who is most excited, so that the request for volunteering doesn't only happen from the school administrators or teachers, but you have parents talking to parents about the importance and the value of volunteering. When it comes to parenting and learning, there's child development expertise to be shared on both sides. And it's really important that we give parents those opportunities to share their insights and knowledge, right? It can't be that the educator is the expert about child development in kids. You've got to be respecting what a parent knows about their child. And then the decision making, right? Expanding the ways that parents get involved in those policies, informing their kids' education plans, whether that's an IEP or a whole school-wide curriculum plan. So some of the ideas that we've heard when we've been talking with folks in the community, particularly a lot of our grant-winning schools, is to put students at the center of this when we're communicating. And what I mean by that is, you see the image, the photo on the bottom right, where the child sketched their learning plan, where the child was showing, this is what I plan to learn, and visually showing his progress. Do you love that? And so it's making sure that students are actually part of the, oops, are we on? No, I'm not. The camera's not on. Making sure that students are visually communicating with their parents. The other part, you see the last bullet point there, is have students film and share video clips, right? So students are masters of technology, and they can be using phones and tablets and lots of technology to take video snippets of the learning that they're doing and their classmates are doing, and send those snippets home to parents, because, you know, we've got the tech experts right there with the tablets in their hands. I also want to share one of my favorite ideas that I heard about from one of our grant-winning principals in Missouri. And she had pie nights, pie with the principal. And literally what that acronym stands for is parents interact with educators. And with the coffee that she would serve, she actually served fruit pie, right? Like they were eating apple pie and cherry pie. And it was complete, informal conversations with the principal where people could ask questions and talk about what was on their mind. Okay, in terms of volunteering, right? So what are some of the ways that schools have successfully expanded their active pool of volunteers? And so part of that, do you have the camera going? No, get the camera going. And so part of that is having families outreach, right? And making sure that you're adding fun and a vibrant community and colorfulness to those volunteer events, right? So, when you think about volunteering, it's got to be a win-win. It's got to be what's in it for the school and what's in it for the family. And the more that you show that you value them and that they're going to build, have a strong relationship and a really collaborative team working with them, the more people are going to come out. And the best way to do that is by sharing creative talents through music, art, storytelling. Parents can be fantastic storytellers, grandparents can, and dance. So the next piece, which is actually my favorite, somebody could advance the slides. Okay, got it, is decision making. And what we want to emphasize here is that every step we take towards, I think we jumped too far. Yes, parenting and learning. So helping families make home routines that build that creative mindset. One of the things that these exemplary schools do is they focus on creativity as not just a sort of time in the schedule and not a creative break, but actually a long-term mindset that influences how we problem solve and approach situations. And helping families think of that is super too. Then also suggesting to families ways that they could carry out those curriculum projects or those lessons that you're doing in your school and extend them at home. So you're really turning a lot of family routines into those teachable moments and opportunities to talk about that connection, that link between what the child did in school in the day and how they're going to carry that out to some activity they do at home or the weekend. And as Tanya said, those 52 fun ideas is just a great way. You can pick one for every weekend and, not run out for a year. The other thing we ask people to do is to make sure that these visuals are very focal and very predominant. So in the same way that 52 weeks of fun was a written piece and it was text, so it was something that people who have mastered the English language would feel comfortable with. If your families don't have that skill reading English yet, then have the kids sketch it out, right? So have a conversation about some interesting ideas you could do this weekend, have the kids sketch out the weekend plans, and bring that sketch home to their parents so they can visualize what they might do together. And then on this slide, my favorite idea here is having students join, or actually the best way is to have students lead the parent-teacher conferences. right? Students should be at that meeting, at that conference, sharing their ideas about what they're learning, what they want to learn next, what they believe their progress is. And one of the best ways to start those parent-teacher conferences is to begin with the child sharing their art portfolio. Now, some people might say, yes, there are some private things that the adults need to talk about, and the parent and the teacher need some time away from the child. Fine, the child doesn't have to be there for the full conference. But start off letting the child know this is about you, and you are valued, and you are treasured, and we are here spending time together celebrating what you have learned and how creative you are. And that just helps that child's confidence and spirit soar. So my favorite of the 4 squares is decision making. And I say it's my favorite because when we make progress in this area, we have so deepened the commitment. And so what happens here is, let's think about ways that you can extend beyond having a few parent representatives on a policy council. That's great. We need those parent advisors. But what are some other ways we can deepen that commitment? So you might start by surveying parents, right, and finding out what areas they want to be involved with. And what are some additional ways that they would like to become engaged? And maybe start those parent-teacher conferences by listening to the parents' expertise and what they're interested in, right? Or a parent meeting. Instead of the parent meeting being a total export of information from the school to the parents, flip that and have the parents start by talking about things they want to share. So it's just important to start determining all the different pathways and policies where you could have more parent input, and then developing that process for it. So Wanda, you're going to talk about how you use this tool in Florida, this tool.
Yes, I was recently at Broward County Public Schools with Emily, and we were delivering a professional development training with their school teams. And we did do this exercise. We introduced the concepts around the Family Conversation Series in alignment with the Turn Around Arts framework. And really, the culminating exercise for the day was after we brainstormed the ideas and participated in exercises to kind of get to the root of how to increase and expand family engagement. We did this inside and outside of the box exercise, which was very, very effective in terms of allowing school teams the opportunity to brainstorm, collaborate, and strategically plan how they are currently addressing family engagement within the four key areas that Sherry just so beautifully outlined. And so what we found is, when those school teams collaborated and when they really thought about their current family engagement plans, there were certain areas that really the teams populated very very inside of the box. It's like, oh, we're really thriving in these areas, and then when it did come to the area of decision making or even communicating, other ways to communicate is where we really saw that the teams were really having to stretch and challenge their thinking around how do we do this? How do we think more creatively? How do we brainstorm ideas that can really engage all families? These were some key areas that we saw them kind of slow down. And so in this picture you see, we actually posted these oversized pieces of paper on the walls, and we just had brainstorming ideas. And so some things that were captured and have been implemented in the Turn Around Arts schools is the opportunity to bring in families, bring in parents to actually participate in professional development sessions. And we've recently done this, and it was an awesome opportunity for parents to be involved in the decision-making process. I mean, it was an opportunity for them to speak of their visions and speak of, what they see as, furthering opportunities for learning in the classroom. And it actually was a nice way to think, okay, this is something that we're not currently doing, but we want to figure out how to do it and build in those family conversations that we spoke of earlier. I saw someone in the chat mentioned donuts with dads and muffins with moms, and I chuckled to myself because one of the things that we also talked about is figuring out alternative times of the day and catchy ways to engage families. And one of the one of the conversations was really about how do we get more dads involved. So when I saw that, it just kind of made me think that that was kind of the premise of some of our conversations, is thinking about, coffee times in the morning. So as Sherry said, not always the 4 p.m. Time slot to engage families, but also when they're coming into the schools, when they're dropping off students, and introducing them and welcoming them into the coffee. And what's beautiful about those conversations that we spoke of, that you can kind of integrate into your these family engagement plans, is that they can be used in snippets. So you can take 30 minutes, you can take a 30-minute conversation over coffee to spark an idea, or share some of the essential questions, or share some information about the 52 weeks. And so really just wanted to share how effective this type of planning and this exercise was with teams. So I highly recommend that you access this within our library and think about how you too could use it to spark additional thinking outside of the box with your school teams in your schools.
Yeah, we also, I think in that conversation, one of the best opportunities was that teachers got to talk to each other. And so they realized that a lot of teachers were already doing some out of the box thinking that they could share with each other. That group actually talked a lot about social media and how you can use it as a way to communicate with folks and get parents into school and kind of meet them where they are on Facebook or Instagram. But what that also can do is actually it's a great way to share what's happening in your classroom. And so if parents are checking their Instagram and you've got an account where you can, we have teachers who even share homework help on Instagram. So it's a really quick and easy way to communicate with families and keep that conversation going. Sherry?
Yeah. So I think you can tell from the ideas you've heard here that family engagement is really both an invitation and an opportunity, and something that both parents and educators embrace when done in this very open, inclusive way. So I just want to wrap this up by reminding you of the resources that are in the Creativity Champions library. And so I've seen in the text box people are saying, how do I get those 52 weeks of fun handout? It's there, just like the videos that Wanda talked about, just like the 8 family conversations that Emily introduced, the Turnaround Arts Research Summary, and also an article that we wrote in the National Elementary School Principal magazine about family engagement. And during the webinar, Kristen just uploaded our grant application flyer so that any of you who are interested in applying for a Crayola grant know how to do that. So we're just going to quickly take a look at some of the questions that you've sent. I know we're running a little bit behind here, but we'd like you to think about what next steps you're going to do, what ideas are going to stick with you, who are you going to collaborate with, and get really practical, get very specific on it. Who will you, when are you going to do your first event, and who are you going to plan it with? I want to remind you of the free giveaway. If you post the artwork that was done at one of your parent meetings, it can be your inside-outside box, it can be your crystal balls or a sketch of the children's future. The first 50 to post will get the class pack. And let's take a look at the questions that you guys asked. I think many of these we have already addressed. I know there was one, Emily, that went to you when you talked about doing math story problems. Someone had asked the question about what did you recommend as an art project that taught math after you recommended that. Could you address that?
Sure. Can you repeat that question, Sherry? I was coming off mute.
Sure. You had talked about math story problems, and someone had asked, what do you recommend as an art activity that teaches math?
Sure. Yeah, I think we've seen our schools use a lot of different visualizations for bringing math story problems to life. So whether it's illustrating it or using manipulatives or kind of creating a story visually, I think that's a great way to engage students. So this engage the students who are kinesthetic learners and visual learners, as well as auditory learners. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways, especially with Common Core, to bring visual arts in for that more conceptual understanding of math.
And I don't know, Tanya or Emily, if you want to address this one. Someone asked, what about virtual schools? She's an online virtual educator, and she wondered how you're handling creating as well as family engagement in a virtual online learning environment.
Sure. We don't actually work in an environment like that at all. But I think, you thinking about social media or thinking about the platforms that you do have to communicate is one way to try to reach out to families. I think our schools also find that it's when you kind of routinize things, it makes that family engagement easier. And so for virtual educators who are reaching out often through technology, if it's once a week or if you kind of create systems for communicating with families, then that may be a way to stay connected with them and share ideas back and forth. I mean, everyone's got a smartphone and a camera in their pocket, and you can snap photos of the work that students are doing back and forth. So it's definitely a different challenge, but luckily technology has also given us tons of tools for sharing ideas back and forth and communicating back and forth.
Great, absolutely. And Tanya, there was a question directed to you. So they said, what about helping parents overcome some of their creative fears? And did you experience any fear on the part of parents of, I'm not creative, I can't really do this? How did you handle that?
Well, we often hear that with teachers themselves who say that they're not very creative. So we built a collaboration of parents, some who are and some who are not. And we'd like the children to see the parents struggle just like they do with creativity. And normally the students themselves help the parents. So the fear of them
That's
not
beautiful.
being an artist, that is not the goal of whether you're creative or not in building things, but it's also the creative thinking behind what you're trying to convey. So it's not, we don't all have to be artists. Our stick figures still work too, but it's the colors, it's the creativity behind what you're trying to portray.
And if I may add to that, just in speaking about the
okay.
Sorry, I was just going to mention that in our family conversation series, there is a conversation. It's Creativity Matters, and there's an exercise that speaks directly to confronting fears about creativity. So I just wanted to, suggest that as a resource as well. So please check that one out.
Yeah, and as you're having families
Right.
share, I know some families may want to share their art and some may not. And so I think just being mindful of in those creative opportunities, giving people space to do their art a little more privately and kind of warm up to creativity. And of course, you'll always have some who say, I'll share and would be happy to show their art. So just kind of being sensitive to that and asking people who are interested in sharing to share, but not cold calling or kind of forcing people to share.
And I'm not sure, Tanya or Emily, if either of you would like to address this, but there was the question from the educator who works with homeless families, and I'm sure that in Turnaround Arts, you also had a lot of families who don't have a permanent home. Any suggestions that you have beyond the ones that we alluded to or that there were texted by other participants about making a good exhibit space in the school? What other suggestions do you have?
A lot of these, and Tanya can speak to this more maybe, but a lot of these sessions are put on with brown paper bags and recycled materials. And so I wonder if another option, in addition to kind of having a special space at school, is to send home extra materials. I know that part of that question was, but what if they aren't able to engage in these creative activities at home because of the cost of materials? For teachers or schools to be in tune with who those families are and offer to send home the extras from the workshop, because of course we overplan and have extra materials, and so maybe sending those home with those families so they can do you a favor and help you clean up from the session, and then also take home things that they can use at home.
Also, when most often in our Title I schools, we do have families who are a part of the backpack program where you put food in the backpack. You can also put Crayola materials in the backpack as well. So that way the kids won't feel any differently about getting something else. And they could use that at home as well, just like you send the homework home. So I think both of them would work.
Great. I know we've gone over our time, and the participants have been very generous with their time. I know, Wanda, you've got a few pieces of information to share about their certificates.
Yes, so for, wait a sec. I jumped over a slide or two. Okay, yes, so if you were not here earlier in the presentation when I started, I just want to remind everyone that for participating in today's webinar, you will receive a certificate of completion from EdWeb, and it will be email address to log into today's session, and will be sent to you within the next business day. Also, what would I like to say next? I'm trying to get through this real quick. Okay, just another reminder to please join the Champion Creativity community. Once you do that, you are able to access the material we spoke of today in our library. So you do have to join the community to do so. Also, you'll get future invitations, and you'll be able to access the quizzes if you are viewing this as a recording. So please make sure you do that and join the community. Am I stuck?
Okay, great. So, so thank you all very much for joining us. I know there's still 300 people in the room, but I think it's a wrap, guys. I really appreciate your joining this conversation.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'd like to thank our presenters as well. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.